Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Welcome. You know what? Welcome to the Ryanverse. Now,
you need to find an explosion that doesn't just stop when someone turns their phone off. That explosion sucks.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it starts out good, but then it's just gone.
And then it's like, oh, hey, that was an explosion. Hope you like me.
How explosions work.
That's good. Well, that notwithstanding, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. I'm Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
And we're happy to have you back again for another wonderful trip through 2021. And what a year it was. It was a good time.
It really was quite a year when you see it all listed like this. I skipped a bunch of stuff, but I watched most of the stuff, as you can see.
Yeah. No.
I even watched Red Notice.
Yeah.
That was for you people. That was not for my own enjoyment. That was so that, there'd be some big thing that everybody watched, and I'd be like, oh, I better watch it. Check it out.
I guess this is happening.
Yeah, exactly. There's a couple of those coming up here. My time is not so valuable, That's the common complaint with movies. Where, I guess it's not common anymore, but there was that cliche that was really, really heavy in the aughts. That's 2 hours of my life I'll never get back.
Right.
It's just like, I'll bet that 2 hours of your life was really effing precious to you.
What were you really gonna do?
I mean,
it's either you're doing this or you're doing this.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
2 hours of Michelle Obama's life has a real value to it. Correct. Most of us, come on, you watched a bad movie. It wasn't there. It wasn't put there to insult you. I mean, I get insulted sometimes, occasionally, so but I don't want to be too hypocritical. But
it didn't punt your dog. It just
that was a cliche that I just thought was like, if you're gonna start out with that, where else is there to go?
Well, you're right. You're right.
So Red Notice, I mean, I could have spent 2 hours better spent than on that, no question. But it's okay. Those aren't 2 hours I'll desperately want back on my deathbed. My life is what it is at this point.
Right. All right. Well,
what about the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan? Oh, that's about 2 hours.
That's 2 hours of your life that you look forward to spending with dear friends. You curl up with a nice fire, and you put your headphones in. You hit play on your phone.
And here we are.
And you just drift away into the lovely, melodious sounds of our scratchy winter voices.
We may sound pretentious and judgy, but we really are here to please.
Yeah.
Deep down.
I think so. We're certainly trying to. All right. Well, you know where we can start, Ryan. Very, very important. You know what we get to do today. Let's start it off 2021 with
based on the incredible true story.
You've been excited for that for a while.
Yeah, we've been teasing this sounder forever, and so I'm going to hit it twice.
Based on the incredible true story.
And all right, so our first movie that we are going to talk about today is 12 Mighty Orphans.
Pretty much the most milk with toast, mediocre, based on the incredible true story out there.
Based on the incredible true story.
Yep.
But it also demonstrates why being inspired by the life of somebody special who changed other lives. Like that's what this is. It's a sports movie.
Mm-hmm.
It shows that if you do that and that's the path that you chose, even if you don't deliver the thrills and spills or the high drama, you still end up with something in the end that you can embrace to one degree or another, I guess.
Right.
You give the synopsis of this so I can get the name in there and
Yep. It is haunted by his mysterious past. A devoted high school football coach leads a scrawny team of orphans to the state championship during the Great Depression and inspires a broken nation along the way.
So you got old school football, which is fun. You got
the old
couple
leather
of decent
helmets.
actors.
Yep.
You got an orphanage that has some management problems. That's always dramatic. This film stars as the guy with the haunted past. What's haunted in his past? I watched this movie. It's a weird way to lead off the synopsis.
Well,
he was like in World War I or something, or I don't know.
That would track. I mean,
it's Luke Wilson.
Luke Wilson. Yep.
And Luke Wilson's a really, really good actor. It's nice to see because his star is tarnished a bit. I mean, he's not some big movie star anymore, but he absolutely can carry a movie. Mm-hmm. And this is a really fun and well-meaning one. It's a really weird cameo by Robert Duvall in it, where it's just he's like a guy who's in the stands at one of the games and they go talk to him, and it really has that weird, it has that super weird cameo feeling. It's only a moment in the movie, so I don't want to oversell it. He
swung by to say hi to Martin, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to be in the scene?"
Seriously, like that. Like what was? Remember the Simpsons spin-off episode? That's an old one now, and it was like, and a few of our friends might be dropping by to wish them luck or whatever. That's really what this felt like. It felt like,
like in the movie,
the star
Holiday
of the other movie from somewhere that just appears here, and they have to kind of wink and just slightly smile their way through this whole weird scene that ends up being nothing really that has to do with anything. And I just found that super weird. What do you leave Robert Duvall alone? He's old. If you don't need him to bring something substantive to your story, let him rest. He's only got a couple of these left in him. I just was,
it would have been a better cameo, frankly, if they would have just never even just showed him as they are panning through the audience, and people would go, "That dude looks like Robert Duvall." Okay, and then there's
what's that character's utility? I don't know. I mean, that's the weird thing about it. He appears, he disappears. What happened and why was it there? No, there's no reason. And so, I mean, it's not like they don't talk about anything. They talk about a little about football and a little about, you're taking over this program, but this is all stuff we already know. So and it's weird because Robert Duvall, even in his current state, is super famous and just shouldn't be. It's just weird. It just shows you that the movie misses the mark here and there. It's certainly not a bad movie by any means. The period trappings are fun. The film makes something out of the innovations that this guy actually brought to the game of football, which are very, very interesting if you're into football. But it's like any of these movies, Dead Poets Society or whatever. When you start lining them up, whereas this one just doesn't even come close to the best of them. That's ultimately what it comes down to.
Right.
It's just a little, even as far as sports movies go, which I watch a lot of sports movies because I just find, and this one was no exception, I find that they're very easy on my psyche and they're very safe things to spend 2 hours with. Where we know the shorthand. We know the shorthand. We're getting stuff out of it. That exactly. Yeah. So I was hoping this would be better than it was, and it wasn't. But again, Depression era, orphanage, plucky kids. You got some teenage kids with some abandonment issues, and there's some drama that comes from that. You got a hard-nosed coach whose nose is really super soft, actually. So I mean, there's none of that sort of this stranger comes to town. If you could tell it from the kid's point of view, like Dead Poet Society does, then suddenly this person in front of you is this magical, amazing thing. that inspires you or pushes you in one direction or another. But this movie's from his point of view, and it doesn't really, you don't spend a lot of time with his family. I mean, you just don't really get a sense of his philosophy. You know, you got to kick a kid off the team and then he learns his lesson and you let him back on. It's like, we've seen all this.
You learn that, you know, you just got to buck up, bear down, and let's get back to work.
Did you read that someplace?
Yeah, that's like the big quote. Yeah, that's the quote from the movie.
Well said. We'll leave it there. It's nice. It was nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's got Vanessa Shaw, Wayne Knight, Martin Sheen, Treat Williams in there, and of course, we already mentioned Robert Duvall comes by, lends a little gravitas. But
if nothing else,
nothing else,
he definitely brings the gravitas. If that was the idea, what this film's missing? A certain amount of random 2.5 minute gravitas.
Yeah,
just throw it in there.
It's interesting here. Like he's on the poster that's on IMDb, but I'm not sure that he's credited. As part of,
he was credited in the film.
Oh, okay.
A lot of those guys, you read the cast where it's, first of all, it's Luke Wilson.
Yeah.
And then you've got all these other ands, withs,
there he is
at the end of the credits, and he was in that bunch.
Yep, and introducing Martin Sheen. Yeah,
it's funny when these movies all share that in common. I don't know if you guys, I don't know if the listeners enjoy that sort of minutia, but I very much do. I sit and watch these credits, and billing is interesting to me. And whenever you get like 3 or 4 old people fighting over the final credit in the credit sequence, it's weird how they have to manipulate it to do it.
Yep.
And I'm always like, once it's more than 2 of you guys, you really just should have taken third billing. At that point, your name is stronger there than being the second of 2 withs before the and.
Yep.
That's not an impressive place to be. So get back up at the top, even if it's not as close to the top as you want.
Yep. It's interesting because obviously that stuff is negotiated by agents. There are also rules that have to be followed from the Screen Actors Guild in terms of billing.
Well, and our favorite one is The Natural, where Robert Prosky's agent, or is it Robert Prosky? No, it's it's the other guy.
Darren.
It affected Darren, but that's not who I'm talking about. It's Foxworth.
Oh, yeah.
Richard Foxworth's agent got him the and credit before Darren McGavin was signed on. So Darren had no place to go except smack dab in the middle of the credits. And so he just waived his credit. And he's not credited in that film. And it's a weird, stupid thing, but he's better off for not being credited in that film than to have taken some weird, because it's a long ways till you get to him. Kim Basinger, Barbara Hershey, even she's barely in it. She's going to be up top. Redford, Duvall, all of them before you even start to get to where the breakdowns start to happen. And Richard and Wilford Brimley, McGavin was going to have to come after all those guys, and he had no shot at being a with or a and. So instead of being the second with, he said, F this. And they're like, you don't want to do the movie anymore? No, I'm going to do the movie. Just leave my name off of it.
Yeah.
If you're not going to treat my name with the respect I've earned from a career this long, then don't put it in there. You can put it at the end to tell everybody who I was. I don't care where it is at the end. But if you're going to roll credits at the beginning, I'm not waiting 7 people to see my name. No, thank you. And I just thought that was kind of cool.
Why? I wish they would open up the thesaurus a little bit and have things like, in addition, we have.
Now you're really causing chaos where what we need, Joel, is an even keel.
Okay. Maybe I'm feeling chaotic today. I'm
just saying these are time-honored things you don't want to mess with. The flip side of the story, why not? We're talking about credits. The other one that I like, I don't know when this would come up, but I can't remember the actor's name, so that's too bad. But Khan, Noonien Soong, played by Ricardo Montalban in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. He has like a right-hand man, and his name's on the tip of my tongue. And he waived credit as part of his contract so that they could negotiate better billing for him, because he's important in that movie. Like he's like the sounding board for the bad guy, and he's in every scene that our villain is in. And it ended up not working out. So he ended up unbilled in a movie where really anywhere he could have got his name in there would have been good for him. Judson Scott is the name of the actor, by the way.
Yep.
Yeah, I knew it would come to me. As long as I just bided my time, Joel, I knew it would come to me. He's good in that movie. That's his highest profile role of his career, really. And he's uncredited in it because his agent was sort of incompetent about how they worked all this stuff out. And he shouldn't have been. He should have been sort of the least prominently credited guy in there.
Yeah.
Star Trek's tricky. You've got to get through the entire original crew in the opening credits before you can even play around with any sort of thing. Even if you're only going to give Uhura 4 lines in the movie, she will be credited ahead of you, even if you're a really important part of the story. That's just the break. So, but poor Judson, he's not credited anywhere in there. Even at the end, he's not. It's just like his character didn't exist.
Oh,
no, it's sad. It's a sad story. Well, on to more inspiring things.
Next up is No Man of God.
Ooh.
The complicated relationship that formed between the FBI analyst Bill Hagmaier and serial killer Ted Bundy during Bundy's final years on death row.
I really like
incredible true story.
Yeah, I really like this movie. It's not a great movie or anything, and it does commit one sort of cardinal sin. It really is. The whole film takes place kind of in these prison halls, and specifically in this interrogation room that all their interactions happen in. I mean, there's the scene where all the other agents, are assigned cases or whatever, and there's other stuff that they try and do a whole intro with. Was it Elijah Wood, right?
Yeah, Elijah Wood.
Driving his car so that you could be outside for part of the movie, But the reality is it's this 2-man show, this FBI guy who's there. I mean, he's got 2 missions. One, the idea behind what all these guys are doing is, interviewing these people, trying to learn as much about them as they can before they're gone.
Yeah.
And those reports and them studying them will then make them much better profilers, and thus was the state of the FBI at the time. And of course, Ted Bundy, even though he's very famous, and all these guys are ambitious young agents, nobody wants to deal with him because he notoriously won't. He notoriously sits there and wastes your time and spins lies, and so nobody wants him. And Elijah's kind of quietly in the corner does the. I'll take Bundy, and they all kind of tease him, but he builds a really interesting and unique relationship with this guy. And that's really interesting to watch. Who's the guy who plays Bundy? Because he's not in everything, and that's a big role. And
Luke Kirby.
It's really, really good. The only sad thing I'll say about it is it for such a simple, elegant, and straightforward thing that has a very, the rules of the interrogation thing it's very clear. And when it comes time for Bundy actually sort of, a couple days or a day before he's about to be executed, does sort of let it go.
Yeah. What
he felt and what was his motives behind what he was doing, his actions. And it's all stylized and you don't really hear him, and you see Elijah's reaction shots and stuff. And sorry if that's a spoiler for it, but to me, the whole movie's the conversations between these two guys. It's sort of somewhat their effect on each other, but really that's where it happens. It's two guys across this table from each other. And if you can make that compelling, you've really done a good job. And it bums me out that they went like, oh, it's going to be all like suggestive and stuff, like for that moment of all moments.
Yeah.
And it partly is they didn't want to just have him rolling, because he really did just let it all out. He revealed, I guess I won't totally spoil it for you. The mission is to get, mission is to get inside his head.
Yeah.
B mission is surely he murdered way more people.
There are other ones that he was a suspect in, but not enough.
And they're trying to get out of him before he disappears. And that's they're both really, really tricky, because Bundy sees himself as an everyman hero.
Yeah.
And becomes that he believes in his own version of himself that is really impenetrable.
He was, by all accounts, he was a brilliant guy. He defended himself, and the judge was like, "You would have made a great lawyer. Too bad you're a murderer. Bye."
That's right.
Luke Kirby, best known from as Lenny Bruce in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So,
well, there you go.
Yeah. Look, I was like, I know. Looking at him, I'm like, oh, well, I've seen him in something. Yeah, no, he's done a ton of TV work. So good on him for nailing this.
I mean, it's a small, subtle little thing, but there's a lot of real crime dramas out there. People are really into these sort of mock you dramas where they show you some of it and talk about some of it. And to me, this was, I don't.
Yeah, I get into that stuff sometimes.
If I'm going to spend time with mass murderers, this is how I want to do it. With a narrative, and I really don't want to do it, but if I'm gonna, this is how I'm going to do it, because I think this is brilliant. This really does not sensationalize him at all, and Elijah's fantastic in it, and Kirby's really, really good in it, and but at the same time, it's what I said. You're in this little concrete room for like 2/3 of the film, so I don't want to sell it as some sort of. There's no killings in it, you know what I mean? There's no
This isn't
the killing.
This isn't the Ted Bundy story. This is about this trying to unlock his mind a little bit.
This mission to get this information, and I haven't revealed anything that Elijah does in it. His method of investigation and the tack he takes with this guy is.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I don't want to spoil things. It was weird though when he like pulled out that ring and was like, "This is the one ring, and I got to get this to Mordor, and I can only get there." It was really strange.
Shame on you for that. That wasn't funny enough to be bringing that into this.
I respectfully disagree. I made myself laugh.
Well, we'll agree to disagree on that one.
Yep.
I'm not saying it wasn't funny at all. I'm not sure that was funny enough.
I jumped in with way too much confidence in that joke. I will say that. I'm going in.
Well, that's the only way to do it. That's the only way to do it. To be in your defense.
Yeah.
If we'd have sensed fear in you when you started doing that, you all would have been lost. So
that's true.
I do admire your commitment to your lame joke. It's a good one. If you like that sort of thing, it's a good one, and it's much higher quality than the crap you get on TV and stuff. So check it out. It's interesting.
This next one is a fascinating story. Kind of a heart. I don't know. It's hard to wrap my brain around. It is also
based on the incredible true story.
Following 9/11. But this one is called Worth, and it's about an attorney. He battles against cynicism, bureaucracy, and politics to help the victims of 9/11. But yeah, basically his job is to determine how much all of these victims' lives were worth.
He's put in charge of the relief fund for the victims of 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows, having worked in law and having worked in government his whole life, that if the parameters aren't set, it will become a mess. Nobody will be satisfied. Nobody will be paid. Like he's the guy. He volunteers with a pure heart to take on this really unenviable task of interviewing these families and, and then setting what the rules are for how much money you get based on what the circumstances were. It's tough job. And of course it's fascinating from a law perspective. Michael Keaton plays the lawyer, but he's just fantastic in it.
Yeah.
His whole team is really, really good. It's a team thing, but it's a true life story. It's very subtly told. It was made for direct cable, I believe. Is this where was this premiered? The poster should show.
Yeah, it was a Netflix film.
It's really good. I mean, I really, really liked it. There's a whole we're getting into the territory here where these, where I just really think these one after another really, really represented these complicated real life stories very, very well. These aren't super entertaining films. Maybe none of them on this list are. They're not meant to be necessarily. They're meant to feel truthful, and they really, really do. And I would say that's true even of the 12 Orphans and, the movie we just talked about. They pull back from the sensationalistic storytelling in a big way to like Joel was saying, to get to the heart of the thing, not in a squishy, feel good, triumph of the human spirit sort of way, but in this way that, this is what this was. This was the dilemma. How do you help these people?
Right.
And a lot of them didn't want to be helped. They, especially the surviving families, were just enraged. They're enraged by the very concept of this.
Yeah.
That there need to be laws and rules and regulations put in place. It's a really, really, it's a really, really good one. It's not Oscar worthy stuff, but it's the kind of movie they don't make a lot of these anymore. And there was a whole little collection of these that I really, really adored, starting with this one.
Yeah. This is one that I watched. I thought that, it like hit all the beats of a great movie.
Yeah.
But it just, wasn't,
it's not a great movie. I'd agree with you there, but it's a story worth telling. It is
absolutely
2
a
hours
story
of your
worth
time.
telling. Absolutely it is. Yeah.
And it feels very authentic. And because of that, I'm willing to give away a little of the perfect drama and the perfect conflicts that don't exactly come to be in it.
Yep.
It embraces the complicated nature of the issue. Stanley Tucci is probably the other actor worth mentioning. He represents a victims' rights organization and is just fighting back, not specifically against the fund, but against the very idea of it. And I think that conflict is interesting, and the way it resolves itself is interesting without being, like you say, without being incredibly dramatically, that is the part that's missing from this. But I really do believe that's because these are all reasonable people. There is no villain. There's nobody trying to undermine anything. It's a system of laws itself and government and, that are all in other people's baskets.
Right.
And it's just so hard to get anything done. And this is the story of something that really did get done, that helped a lot of people that needed help, and how it happened. There's a lot of legal minutia in it, but I found it interesting. Yeah. And it's not,
I found it very interesting. Yeah.
But it was worth it. It was, not to be used, not to.
Yeah. And Amy Ryan also, we should mention, love her.
Always really, really
so great.
His whole team of young people and the questions they bring up, like I enjoy that. They're grappling with the issues surrounding this thing. And again, I really, really admired a guy who stepped into they all say, well, you want to do this? Nobody wants to do this job, but he keeps it true, and I really, really dig that. So,
yep. All right, next up in our
based on the incredible true story,
we have I love this guy. I love him so much. Andrew Scott and Ruth Wilson in Oslo, recounting the true life, previously secret, back channel negotiations and the development of the pivotal 1990s Oslo peace accords between Israel and the PLO.
I remember when that happened, and how, if you were into political science at all, I don't remember how it started, which this is the story of that, this really clandestine, behind closed doors meetings of a PLO representative and an Israeli representative, to try and find some sort of negotiated peace between these warring things, which are still warring to this day. And again, this is, I think this is a great movie either. This is a lot like the other one. You really do. This is based on a play, I believe. So this is, again, it's a one room conference table scene where these diplomats fight out every issue and every harm and every wrong that's passed between the two warring peoples that go back centuries. And these two, what are they? They British people? One's an American, one's British. I can't remember. Neither of them are American. They're both British.
I haven't watched it yet. Let's see.
Part of it is they're hiding behind
Norwegian.
Oh, that's right, Norwegian.
Yep.
It was a big deal for Norway to start this without help from England, without help from America, and even keeping it from them was a big deal. And in fact, the Americans when we got involved in this, we shot it all to pieces. This really was a negotiated peace between these two people, ultimately. Sorry if I'm spoiling the movie, but that's the history of it. I remember in the 90s where it really was going to happen. They were going to draw the borders. The Palestinians were going to get autonomy over their own lands. Huge issues like Jerusalem and whatever had compromises built into them. It's looking back on it, it's the only way any of this was ever going to work. And the different sides learning that, and these two Norwegian diplomats, like I said, trying to keep it going. Ruth Wilson and Andrew Scott are fantastic in it. And they have very different philosophies about how this should be handled too. So there's conflict within them. It's a really, really cool movie. Again, it's not. It's kind of, to me, I wish more streaming movies were like this. It's people are going to say it's boring or it's this or that, but it really does right by this story, which is a really complicated story to tell, especially if you're coming to it without a real understanding of the details. You learn a lot, and you learn a lot of stuff that maybe you should know before you have an opinion about any of this. And I think that's very, very cool. So I like that a lot. I'm sure it's a fantastic play. It must be.
And the movie was directed by Bartlett Sher, who I believe directed the play. The adaptation of it, of the screenplay, was J.T. Rogers, who wrote the play as well. So it's going to be very
little stagey, question, but it's a story worth telling. I can't stress that enough. It really is.
Okay, next up,
because in here lies the kernel. It lies the compromise. This is a compromise these two people came up with, and there is only one way to stop fighting is to stop fighting.
Yeah,
and it's hard, and nobody appreciates that more than me. It's hard. And the way they manage to do that is extraordinary. They do it by connecting with each other as humans. And it's not easy. And it's amazing to see. And it's utterly tragic how it fell apart. That part's not shown in the film, just to warn you. But the fact that we're still here and that's all the same issues, and that, 30 years later, and that the only way to stop is to get back into giving and taking. And it feels like there's no, it feels like that until the players change, there's no chance of that, and it's hopeful in this wonderful way, but it's tragic if you really know the history of it too. And I like that, and I like Andrew Scott and Ruth Wilson too.
Yeah, they're both taking
a break off from his Dark Materials series.
I know,
totally different kind of project, and I believe this is a HBO as well. So
yep,
it's good use of their time. They're fantastic in it. I don't want to sell it too much. They're both known as being very, very, very sharp, and I don't want to say over the top, but just very, very sharp, big performances that each detailed, large performances that each of these guys have delivered, and this is not that at all. And but that's what's delightful about it. You get to see, they're being subdued and them being these mousy, intellectual, diplomatic people is interesting. It's fun to watch them in that different sort of role, and yet there's still cool conflict between them. So yeah, I dug this film a lot. Joel, you're a fan. You should definitely see it.
I gotta watch this one. All right, another movie I need to watch. It's been sitting in my queue going, and I don't know how many times I've been like, maybe I should just watch The Dig.
Based on these incredible true story.
It is. Yep. These are all dry history lessons. I get that.
Yeah, and I love dry history. I actually dig that stuff.
If you don't like that, I mean, you'll know if you've sat through these before and you don't like them, then these just aren't for you. Starting basically with Worth and the certainly Oslo and now The Dig. It's this very polite. It's a polite British movie about a really polite time in society, that's just, you got to live with that mannered way of the world. There's no place for like the maid having a wisecrack. That just isn't how things were done. And once you start having that's to me, to quote a line from whatever it is, the Altman film. Can't remember the name of it. I always forget the name of it because it's a proper name, right? Something Manor or something, whatever.
Gosford Park. Gosford Park.
Yeah, there's this great moment where Bob Balaban, who plays this useless, ineffectual movie producer, he's like on the phone with the suits back home, and he goes, I don't think it's going to work that we have the maid like making all these jokes. One of them just said 2 words out loud, and the whole room just stopped dead in its tracks.
Yep.
So it's a fun moment because he's buying into this little fact-finding mission that he's on. Even though what the Hollywood cliche ends up being is very, very different than that. So, and it's funny because that moment, was written by Julian Fellows, was completely recreated in the Downton Abbey movie.
Yeah.
Rather great comedic effect, but still very much, that's not going to happen. Nobody who's lived the life of this particular person is going to forget their place in this situation.
Right.
It's just not
not
believable at all, even if it's cute.
So this is in we were going to 1938. This is the archaeologist. Ralph Fiennes plays an archaeologist who is embarking on the historically important excavation of Sutton Hoo in 1938. Carey Mulligan, my beloved Carey Mulligan, also in this.
It's her lands that this thing is discovered on, and he's just this local guy, and she gives him permission, and all that's a little delicate to excavate this thing. And then once they realize it's a ship and it's of this certain vintage, and it's super delicate, all the historical and archaeological society of Britain descend basically upon it. And that's hard on Carey's character for a lot of reasons. It's hard on Rafe's because he's, this was sort of his baby. So there's a lot of pride and just a lot of manners and a lot of societal things that even in 1938, you kind of have to understand. And those keep this from being everyone's shouting their feelings at each other kind of film. And that never happens. So, you have to live with that. But I thought it was lovely. I like The Dig a lot. It's not, again, there's no romantic sparks. It's not Bridgerton. It just isn't.
Yeah. They aren't going to both be reaching for this Anglo-Saxon mug, and their hands will touch and they'll look and they'll go, oh, but we can't.
but it's like the rest of these, it's a more complicated story, and it may be less. There may be less heightened drama because of that, but that's the you can have both, but it's hard. That all of these movies lean towards authenticity at the expense of heightened drama. It is admirable in my opinion, and this wasn't my favorite of these, but it was lovely. It was really neat. I felt like I experienced. I spent this time with these people that I really believed in. I mean, that's one of the things I want from these. I mean, I'd love if like the ship had a curse and yeah. That isn't what it is. That's not what it is. It's not that.
And that this is
the
a
ship
larger
is barely an outline in the dirt. That's what they all got so excited about. Joel just read the synopsis. The synopsis assumes you knew what that discovery was and how significant it was, and of course you don't. You got to learn about that as you go through the movie, but it was significant and was kind of amazing. So
it does, it brings up, this is a larger question, and I don't want to sidetrack us too much, but I mean, movies like The Dig and Oslo and Worth and things like that, they would die in the theaters in the cinemas. So it's like
these days for sure.
Yeah. And even in the
70s, they would have had a tough time of it, I think.
Yeah. And so this is an example of why streaming services turning studios, the Amazons, the Netflix, the HBOs and things like that, where they can do some good is they give a home to some of these smaller, quieter stories that are worth seeing if they bring up, if they're on a subject that you might go okay.
And this one this one isn't in the conference room. You get outside, you get to go on a bunch of bike rides, you get to be on some different properties and stuff. And there's the World War II, of course, in 1938 is about to break out in England, and that's hanging over them in a really, really heavy way throughout. And the movie even gives you some young lovers to give a crap about. I don't know why. They don't help. But Lily James shows up, and something of a love triangle there.
Yep.
Or because it's English, it's like a non-love triangle. A not enough love triangle, we'll call it.
Yeah, maybe that's it. All right, let's move on to the final movie in our
based on the incredible true story
category. This brings us to other titans of current British acting, Benedict Cumberbatch and Claire Foy in The Electrical Life of Louis Wain.
Louis Wain. Stephen Colbert was talking about it. What's the movie that The Fifth Estate? That's the dude, the weird blonde guy who hacked everybody's information and stuff and was sharing
Julian Assange, I believe.
Yeah, Julian Assange. Stephen Colbert did a bit where he's proved that he's so despicable that he's uncumberbatchable. Benedict plays him in the movie, and you still hate him. I thought that was funny. Not such with the incredible Electric Life or whatever it is of Louis Wain. Yep. Too long. I get it, what you're going for, but too long to type.
Yep.
Louis Wain was the guy who painted all the cats, and I know that if I could just show you, here's one of his cats. We probably should have had one queued up.
Give me a second. Go. Keep talking about the movie.
So you may not know Louis Wain, and that, of course, that's the whole point of the movie. But you know these cats. At least you know a handful of them. He was an early graphic artist. He made his living by drawing for the newspapers, drawing news events, basically. Right before not the event of the camera, but right before the camera and camera photo processing became inexpensive enough that they could include those in the newspapers. So he was sort of this dying breed of a guy who was this very weird artist who sketched all kinds of strange things. He had a weird old money family in England, which was great because none of the members of it are reliable enough to bring home the bacon in any sort of modern sense. And they live in this crazy, there you go. They live in this crazy cat-filled home with all these unresolved emotional issues and all these very brief moments of being touched by genius and by madness, and that's all juggled throughout the story. So likewise, I think with Benedict in it and him being like a cat person, if this was a fun, quirky movie, you'd all have heard about it and had watched it by now.
Yeah,
I guess it isn't. It's shot in Academy ratio, which is roughly the shape of an old TV. So square, so black bars on the sides, gang, is what you have to look forward to. But it's lovely. It's a beautiful movie from a costume design. It's basically a chamber drama. So from a costume design and the trains and the beach and the umbrellas and them out in the garden playing croquet and stuff, like just really, really lovely. But it's a weird, understated thing about craziness that's not bonkers. It's treated with a lot of dignity and respect and understanding, even though nobody really understood any of it at the time. Mm-hmm. So, because there's I don't know, there's movie crazy, and then there's mental disabilities that right. that are all very common in our lives, but back then really was just an incredible hindrance to you being what was expected of you. And as we learned from The Dig, and as you kind of learned from this film, that's nothing was more important than that. Nothing was more, for a while there's nothing more important than good manners. And it's tough to have them, even if you understand the rules, when you're not fully, in control moment to moment. And it isn't just Louis, there's other people, the whole circle all kind of have their issues. I liked it. I thought it was really, really neat, but it wasn't a zany sort of Tim Burton funny movie. It's quiet at times. It's contemplative. The lead character is difficult. He is not just he is a weird, wacky guy, but he's not just a weird, wacky guy. And you have to, from a biographical standpoint, it's not very generous with the audience, the story.
Sure.
But I still thought it was really, really cool. But had this movie been completely dry and had no empathy in it, which is not true, it does, it has plenty, I still would have loved it because it's just so gorgeous. It's really, really beautiful. People who made this and the way the thing is framed, and I was just like, wow, it's just cinematography, all of it, just really, really inspired. And these other films, Dig and Oslo and Worth, have the absence of cinema style to them. Deliberately, they're telling these real stories, and they're trying to tell them in a straightforward and authentic way. This film is telling the story of an artist, and the art creeps in from all sides, and the art even overwhelms the thing at times, and that's fun. I enjoyed that sort of balance, but it's weird. It's a little odd and off-putting, and a not conventionally satisfying drama, really. So keep that in mind.
Yep. And this one is an Amazon.
Amazon original.
Amazon original. So all right. So all right. So we now have to real quick cover the distinction between
based on the incredible true story.
And our next category, which of course is
ripped from the headlines.
There you go.
Well, ripped from the headlines. That first time I heard that term was during the initial run of Law and Order on NBC.
Yeah.
Where they would have a OJ like trial, or they would have a Menendez like trial, or they would have a whatever. None of those were very good. They're all gross. They're all gross. They all appeal to the worst sides of our makeup. I don't mind a nice crime drama, but once you start just ripping off something that's happening in the world and sensationalize it by making it your own in a little hour TV drama, you've done an evil thing. Even if it's not evil, you've done an evil thing, and you should be ashamed of yourself about it. And you should be ashamed of yourself for casting Robin Williams in it, and Whoopi Goldberg, And it's just ugh, yeah.
Yeah.
I know we all kind of are drawn to that. I get why, but it isn't good.
And for a while, it was always
Ripped from the headlines.
And Martin Short, as you've never seen him before.
Right. They did seem to go hand in hand, Joel.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct about that. One of these is, I'm not really being fair to it. It's not really ripped from the headline. It's sort of a proper biopic, but a couple of these are more ripped from the headline style. So we'll start off with the first one.
Yeah. The first one is Zola.
Ripped from Twitter.
Ripped
from the headlines.
Twitters. Ripped from the Twitters.
This was a Twitter thread about this odyssey that this stripper from LA went to. She traveled with a friend she had just met to Florida and had become enslaved in a prostitution ring there. And I could not bring myself to read the Twitter thread. It's long and extensive. It's a little mini novel of it, but it's well written enough and honest enough that it got the attention of some real writers at the time. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the movie, was on a lot. I mean, the whole reason I watched this was because it was on a lot of critics' top 10 of the year lists and stuff. So read the synopsis. I know I just synopsized.
Well, you literally just said it. A stripper named Zola embarks on a wild road trip to Florida. That's literally the whole thing.
Yeah, the movie it reminds me of is Harmony Korine's Spring Breakers, if you've ever seen that. Which is an ugly movie, but a movie where you never really lose track of the point. This film, because it really is based on these weird experiences, and because it's hard to find a point in it, becomes this. It's just hard. We talked about it on the show before. It's hard to show this kind of violence and this kind of salacious sort of, prostitution and sexist stuff without glorifying it in some way. And this movie doesn't quite manage that. The young woman who plays Zola is really, really good. What's her name?
Taylor Page. And it's, I'd never seen in anything before. She's quite good. Mm-hmm. And Riley Keough is really, really brave as her friend who convinces her to come out there. There's this one scene which is what you call black speak, where Riley's in the car on the way there and she's going on this rant, and our hero's reaction to it is agog. And it's funny watching some dumb white gangster kid, mm-hmm. Trying to pretend they're a black person, but it's to see it through the eyes of this other person. Like the film's full of moments like that really resonate, but it's just a collection of moments. It's hard to make it more than what it is. And like our based on incredible true story films, this film is super stylized, and I really don't know that helps it. To compare it to Spring Breakers again, Spring Breakers is stylized really only in its cinematography and its color scheme. Otherwise, it's just a point and shoot movie. There's no other way to tell a true crime story or a whatever, because any sort of goofy theatricality that you bring to it, you move yourself demonstrably further away from what it is at its core. And this movie does that countless times. At the same time, really good filmmaking, Joel. So, I mean, that's part of, I'm sure, why critics liked it, because those flourishes are ingenious at times and they're kind of amazing. But I just felt like, I don't know, what was I watching? I found this film impossible to glom onto and grab onto as it was going. It was not a pleasant experience for me, but it's just so ugly. It's the ugliness of the world. Maybe we need to be confronted with that a little bit more. It's possible, but then you add the pageantry of it to it, and then I don't know what it is anymore. So it was a tough one. It's tough. I don't know. And it was made mostly by women, which I think helps a lot, because there's lots of nudity in it, as you'd expect. There's lots of really gross stuff, but even the main prostitute character, you never see her naked.
Riley joked she's probably one of the only films she's ever been in where she wasn't naked, at least at some point.
Right.
And, that's in and of itself is sort of a bold choice that maybe, but it's so smutty and awful, and the world of the story is so ugly that I'm not sure that you'll even notice that she wasn't, because the idea of prostitution still comes across pretty hardcore in it.
Right.
And again, no pun intended.
Right.
Believe it or not.
Okay, let's move on to next film, and which is also.
But I recommend, even though I didn't do it, Joel, I recommend reading the Twitter thread, because I really think, in one person's words, their experience has a power that this thing missed, recreating the story.
Sure.
And I didn't read it, so I can't say that for sure, but that's my final thought on that, on Zola.
Okay. Well, next up is
Ripped from the Headlines.
And it's Matt Damon in Stillwater.
Yeah, this definitely has a rip from the headlines feel to it. Although I like Stillwater a lot, actually, because it's my kind of movie. This Damon does a pretty good job for him, as good a job as a movie star of his caliber at this point can, of disappearing into this kind of trucker junior character whose daughter is arrested in Paris and is serving not a life sentence, but a really, really long prison sentence for something he believes she didn't do. And it's his fight to get her free.
Yeah.
And then the friends he makes along the way, literally, it really is about that too. The connections and the people that he meets, the advice that he gets, and just how a person even grapples with this. Though it is ripped from the headlines. It is truly one of those Law and Order stories where this is just very much based on a real thing that isn't, but it is disguised enough that it isn't that thing, which gives it the chance to do its own thing with this idea. And all the people who actually lived this are still around. The girl in question denounced this film and threatened to sue when it came out. But all of that scandal didn't really make it much of a hit, because in the end, it's a fairly contemplative slice of life film without any real foot chases or stuff. He gets beaten up at one point in it, but there's not a lot of justice. That's what you want to feel, and you don't really get to feel it, even though it is kind of, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Stillwater was a good movie. It's made by people who know how to make movies. It's scripted very smartly. It's shot really, really well. It's acted really, really well. So it's totally worth your time if that setup means something to you. I skipped past the synopsis again. You want to read the synopsis so they can really get
it's
on what it is?
Yeah, I mean, you sort of basically hit on it. It's a father travels from Oklahoma to France to help his estranged daughter, who is in prison for a murder she claims she didn't commit. So he's an Oklahoma roughneck guy, and his daughter she's in prison for murdering her girlfriend. So I'm assuming that's probably where part of the estrangement comes.
Not really.
Oh, okay.
He was just a crappy father.
Okay. Well, there you go.
So that's when I say it like that, it sounds like, oh, well, that's cool. It's avoiding the cliche of blah, blah, blah. But like a lot of these, it avoids cliches almost to a fault, to the point where you're, what really is it then? Because he's a dumb redneck, but he bends over backwards to be sensitive about that part of her life. It really is, he wasn't around. And now he is. And what good is it doing? Because you can't fight the system. Some Okie can't just go to France and beat the French justice system. The idea is laughable. So, there's very much this thing at the heart of it where the wisest characters in it are kind of like, by not accepting this and not getting on with it, you are causing so much damage. That's a common theme that runs through it that I think is very, very valuable, that has some wisdom sort of in our everyday lives. But of course, he can't let go and doesn't, and will just let you see where that leads the movie. It may not be where you expect necessarily, but it was a good movie. It just not a super entertaining movie. So
sure,
on this scale, when you're doing this sort of storytelling and you've got a big movie star and you don't really connect with any sort of mainstream audience, I don't think that's necessarily a failure. Maybe it's a failure of ours, but it's not a good enough movie where I'm sure that that's the case, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Next up is a movie that is part
ripped from the headlines
and
part
based on the incredible true story.
This is the story of the Williams sisters and their no, I mean, but like it's the story of how they became the Williams sisters with the coaching and drive and upbringing of their father Richard in King Richard.
And it was made with their cooperation and their endorsement. So that's important. I mean, I think you have to, I think that lends a little bit of authority to the thing when you're watching. It's a really good movie. As far as good sports movies goes, I think we'll see if any others sneak their way in here. But I think this was the best one by a long shot. It was really, really well made. And full of all that big time drama and conflict that you really want out of these things. So you get that in every scene basically in this one. But it isn't, I lament that it isn't the story of the Williams sisters. They're part of it. It's just not their story. And because it's his, and because there's so much of his story that was deliberately left out of this thing, that it became a headline grabbing film basically. So not so much ripped from the headlines in a salacious sense as, you know, this caused Richard's other children to come out of the woodwork with a different story. It caused all kinds of sort of ruckus as far as what is a film like this should do? What is its purpose? Because by the time it's over, even this guy's worst decisions, that at least that you think are his worst decisions at the time, work out and everything turns out awesome. And he ends up raising these two super well-adjusted, like mega talented, fantastic and perfect role models. And they really are that. Venus and Serena Williams, like, I'm sure I know they have their own problems, but they really are, as far as you ever see athletes become, just really self-actualized and really, really powerful. They're, both as people in their struggles throughout the sport and their struggles with celebrity and as icons that you can really look up to and be kind of amazed by. That part's kind of neat. And the connection between that is kind of cool. So I really, really liked it. And more importantly, I guess, compared to some of the rest of these, I was super entertained by it. Will Smith's performance is fantastic. He knows he's in, I mean, Will always knows the kind of movie he's in. We talked about Bad Boys 3. You're not going to get Will's best in that because there's so much time is going to be spent crowd pleasing that there's going to be no chance of an actual character coming to life before your eyes.
Yeah.
It's just Will as cop, comedian as cop, actor, movie star as guy with a mission. And this is totally different. This guy is really unique. He's a lot of Will Smithisms in there, but it's among his best performances because you really do get a sense of a different person and of a different life philosophy. And I think he buries himself in that really, really well and is a force of nature in the film, like the film intends. And I dig that. And I dig, what is the actor's name? Groot?
Oh my God. I had it right here. John Bernthal.
John Bernthal. Thank you. He's great in it. And there's a whole bunch of other people that are too. The woman who plays his wife is fantastic.
Let's give her name a shout out here. If that is Anjanae Ellis. Or Ingenue Ellis.
Well, she's really, really good because she's not just both as an actor and as a character. You have to take a back seat to this giant personality, and when it's your time to shine, or when it's time for the character to put their foot down and inject their own beliefs into the situation, it sometimes it feels like, oh, look, the potted plant started talking to us in the movie. Like sometimes that shit doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? It's just like it, because it's not earned by the rest of the movie, right? It wants you to be surprised. And this movie doesn't take that path. So it doesn't take the easy way out, but it does as a biopic about a guy. It leaves out a ton of biography that's out there that would paint him in something of a different light and might have made for a slightly more interesting movie, because that dichotomy is what's interesting. And we get a little bit of it, definitely, but I don't think we get enough of it. I think he's near sainted by the end of the thing. And I'm not sure that's
sure. All right. Well, okay. So that is gonna do it for. Oh, sorry. I just lost my. Sorry, audience. Sorry, technical difficulties. That is gonna do it for our
Ripped from the headlines.
And our
Based on the incredible true story.
No, but it's not really true, mate. We got lots of, even though the category is gone, we have lots of based on the incredible true stories coming up.
There is that, but that's for our, and I just want,
so don't take your hand too far away from the trigger.
Well, we know that I never do. All right. So
for the love of God, don't ever play that explosion again. That was terrible.
No, I will not. I will. I'm going to try this one here for our next category here. Oh, here we go. It is time for war and politics.
And sometimes both.
And sometimes both.
And sometimes very little of either. Sorry, this category was sort of whipped together because, as a bit of a catch-all for some of these political thrillers and war movies that I didn't know what else to do with. They do kind of go together, kind of, I guess, until we get to the last one.
All right. Well, first up is the movie 6 Minutes to Midnight.
Eddie Izzard.
Yep.
I read the synopsis. You'll have to read the synopsis for all these because these are hard.
Okay, so UK, August 15th, 1939. 17 days before World War II, an English teacher and his camera disappear on a coastal boarding school with 20 German teen girls. Miller gets the job 6 days later, secretly trying to find out what happened.
I love Miller gets the job. What? That's not how you write a synopsis. I hate that synopsis. However, it does get a lot of information into it. It's an investigation story, sort of. It's weird that it talks about the disappearance of those people, because that doesn't really happen until the very end of the movie. So it shouldn't be talking about that, but that's the mystery. This is a British mystery that is known to the people of England, and it isn't known to us. So the synopsis is saying it as it's a foregone conclusion, and we have to learn why throughout the film. There's a disconnect there, but it is a fun British war mystery. That's it told in a very old-fashioned way. It's a rather independent little film with some very interesting performances. This idea of this boarding school in England for these young German aristocratic women, and how it's what it's meant to do is to teach them our ways culturally, to learn from them, and then the rich people marriages between the people of Europe can then be more successful and stuff like it's like a breeding ground for arranged marriages is essentially what the boarding school is.
Here's a better synopsis real quick. Summer of 1939, influential families in Nazi Germany have sent their daughters to a finishing school in an English seaside town to learn the language and be ambassadors for a future-looking National Socialist Society. A teacher there sees what is coming and is trying to raise the alarm, but the authorities believe he is the problem.
Interesting.
Is that better? Is that a better synopsis?
It is, although it is, because it doesn't ruin the end of the movie. So how could it be worse? But it's much better. It's also better written. But a teacher there, again, we know that this guy's undercover. We know he's on a mission from the government from the get-go. So it's not really playing fair in that way. So they take the two of those and mush them together, and you got something. Honestly, it's a hard sell. It's complicated. What the school is, what he's investigating. You know what I mean? The paranoia around the launch of the Second World War. It's weird. It's something that Americans can't understand because we didn't suffer from it. We didn't think that the Nazis were going to come here and start dropping bombs on us. Obviously, some version of that ended up happening to us. But it was a shocking, amazing thing. Whereas in Europe, even in England, even with the English Channel between you and the mainland, it was oppressive and it was fearful. And there was just something really dark and awful about it. And more than that, even, there was this, from the French building all those trenches that the Nazis just flew over. There was this getting ready for World War I again, or in the case of the Brits, that desperately trying to avoid World War I all over again because the wounds of that were still fresh.
Yeah.
So it's complicated. It's emotionally complicated. And I'm sure that's what drew Eddie to it. He plays the leading man in this thing, a really conventional, old school, Douglas Fairbanks Jr. kind of part. It's really it's weird to see him in that, but it's fun because he's totally against type and he brings something interesting to it. It's Judi Dench is in this, yes?
Yep, Judi Dench, Nigel Lindsay.
Judy runs the school.
Yep, Jim Broadbent.
Yeah. Broadbent's fun as a guy a neighbor of the school. Who's the actor who co-wrote the thing and is also in it?
Let's see. Andy.
He's my favorite.
Let's see. There's Andy. The writers are Eddie Izzard. It says Salin Jones, Andy Goddard.
So is he a producer then?
Yeah.
He was in a film where he played Dylan Thomas, and he's not in a lot of stuff. And the guy just knocks me out. He plays kind of just don't want to call him a spy. He plays like a body man for a government agent. And it's an interesting role and it takes an interesting spin. And that's what's fun about this. If you like these late night on the coast, waves are crashing, rain is coming down, and there's some sort of weird mystery going on, as long as you don't need the mystery to be super satisfying, because it isn't. It's downright dull, in fact. These people really are what they say they are to some degree, and what's going on around them really has very little to do with them and more to do with the impending war. And there's not a lot an individual, even a spy, can do under those circumstances. There's also a crazy, weird scene halfway through where you're just like, what is this? Where they're on the beach and Eddie, to escape, steals this guy he steals a marching band guy's like uniform or whatever. There's this weird foot chase, and it's really comical and weird. And I guess I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what to do with this weird Mr. Bean foot chase that's in the middle of the thing. It's very, very strange. But on the whole, I watch a lot of these period drama, war mystery, things. We talk about them a lot on the show because I pretty much watch them all. This one was interesting. It was different. I didn't know anything about this story of the German girls who disappeared one night. I didn't know anything about that, and there is a foggy British like coolness to it that I really, really dug, and that's what Eddie's going for. He's making a deliberately throwback film.
Yeah.
And it works, but it's only so good. I mean, it could only ever be so good, really.
Right.
Wish I could remember the name of that actor. He would be hard to find in that list. But,
I'm looking here. There's a lot of.
He played Dylan Thomas in a movie about Dylan Thomas going on an American literary tour. And it's a really, really good movie. So I wish I could remember the name of the movie. Wish I could remember the name of the actor.
Let's see. Dylan Thomas, a poet in New York. Would that be what it is?
Nope.
Last Call.
Nope.
Let's see.
Maybe it's not about Dylan Thomas.
These are the
maybe it's about some other poet, some other drunk Irish poet that I'm forgetting. But I think it's Dylan Thomas. Would you Google Dylan Thomas movies?
I did indeed.
Let's do this, folks. Are you with us, audience? Let's find
last call is the most Dominion. Reese Ifans.
Nope.
Set fire to the stars.
Set Fire to the Stars. That's the movie. Thank you.
Okay.
Why was that so damn hard to find?
Because there's a
How
ton
many
of
Dylan Thomas movies?
It's Ceylon Jones. Ceylon Jones plays Dylan Thomas. Ceylon Jones. So it was Ceylon Jones who was one of the writers. Yeah.
Yes. Good.
Okay.
We solved that mystery
We
and
did
more.
It! Woo!
More to the point. What is it? Set the what on fire?
Set fire to the stars.
Obviously, that's a Dylan Thomas short. That's a tiny little movie that is fantastic. And our who's in that with him? Can you look it up real quick?
Give me a moment.
Dylan has a super fan who agrees to escort him around on this tour, and it's truly one of those don't meet your heroes kind of stories.
That's another Elijah Wood.
Elijah's fantastic in it, and I just really liked it. Set Fire to the Stars took me by surprise, and I had never seen that dude, or if I had seen him, the Dylan Thomas disguise was so thorough that I was just kind of amazed. I felt like I was spending time with Dylan Thomas. So what else can you ask from a movie like that? That's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but for me, that was like, wow. I felt like spending an uncompromising hour and 40 minutes with him, and you felt like you learned about him and you sympathized with him, and yet you could understand why everyone was mad at him and hated him all at the same time. That's tricky storytelling. And this film has, not so much from a character standpoint, but definitely from a plot standpoint, it's got some of that trickiness to it. It subverts your expectations, and probably not in a good way, because if what you really want is, you know what I mean, some sort of American Horror Story explanation for this disappearance, you're going to be sadly disappointed. But not bad. Good job, Eddie.
Well, there you go. Next up is...
I do feel a little bad for Eddie, because he thought, oh, here, I got Judi Dench. Like, we're ready to rock here, man.
We're going to roll, yep.
It doesn't quite take off like that. But Andy Goddard makes a handsome film, and it turned out pretty good.
So this next one is kind of
ripped from the headlines.
Really?
Well, I mean, kind of. It's the Mauritanian.
A little bit.
Mohamedou Oudslahi fights for freedom after being detained and imprisoned without charge by the U.S. government for years.
It's really based on the incredible true story, although incredible is
based on the incredible true story.
But Mauritanian is more along the lines of the center section there of our based on the incredible true story, which is this rather, it's a procedural based on these real events and based on these bad laws and based on all these, the legal wrangling and advocacy that goes on here. It's not deeply satisfying. It's real stuff. Although this film has a very, very good reputation online. It's very, very well reviewed. Who's the maid lady in it?
Well, we have Jodie Foster, and we have Shailene Woodley, and Tahar Rahim is our main.
So
is
Jodie Foster and Shailene Woodley, right? Big stars. So why have you never heard of it? Well, because it's about Guantanamo Bay, and there aren't any movies about Guantanamo Bay that make you feel good. They all make you feel awful, and this likewise does that. Yeah, it does it in a really clever way. A lot of these movies have this in common. Oslo does it. They all come to a stop at an extremely hopeful place. So as movies, you feel good, and yet the first thing that crosses the screen, the text, tells you that everything still sucks, and it is like this whip around where you're like, whoa. We saw a couple of years ago, one of my favorite movies of that year, Dark Water with Mark Ruffalo, does the opposite. You end in this hopeless, worthless place, and then the text starts scrolling, and you're like, and it doesn't so much, the text doesn't change the world, but it shows that it gives you evidence of this crusade that happened that makes you be able to pull yourself up off the carpet, literally. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to do it. And so normally I would say, well, geez, what stories are you telling? Why,
Yeah.
Why are you choosing to end here where it doesn't really end, or end in this place of falseness, basically, to what really happened?
Right.
But in a way, I dig it. I get it. Here's the dramatic part of it. It's not from the prisoner's point of view. It's from this lawyer's point of view. So it's that kind of story. Foster plays it. She's great. She's the perfect person at this point to play this uncompromising, rather unfeeling, like a person who's been through so much tough work on behalf of what really is righteousness, but is unable to connect with the human element of any of this out of just a need to protect herself and her utility from the human tragedy that is everywhere when it comes to our laws, and certainly comes to the way that we reacted as a nation unified after 9/11. I don't care what, you can write letters to me all you want. As a matter of fact, I hope you do. We did everything wrong as a nation after 9/11. That good feeling you remember, that was used purely for evil and only for evil. And economic evil, which was really at the heart of it. It was money in the end. That was the only thing good that came out of it. And it only came out of it, like money always does, for a select few. Any movie about Guantanamo, Kristen Stewart's in a really good one where she plays a guard down there. Yeah. I don't know if it's a great movie. Again, I don't think this is necessarily a great movie, but the veil that it lifts off and the way that it awakens you and the way that it engages you with things that are important is night and day from the sort of event films that Joel said are the only things really succeeding in theaters these days. And I'm glad that STX Entertainment and Bleecker Street and Focus Features, and that people are still making movies like these, because I watch them all, so maybe I'm totally biased. They're my kind of movies, but I just hope they don't go away. I really feel like this movie didn't make any money. Oslo didn't make any money. I mean, none of this. These films almost feel like they're nonprofit public service messages at this point. And to some degree, they have a little bit too much public service message and maybe not enough drama in them. The balance is hard to get right, but this story is outstanding. It's really, really well told. I mean, it's a really, really well made movie, as the movies on this list. Who's the lawyer? He's kind of a star too, who is the veteran who is on the opposing side.
That's a very good question. Well, there's Clayton Boyd. Yeah. There's Benedict Cumberbatch.
Benedict Cumberbatch with a Southern accent. That's tough
so
to
he
buy,
plays a lawyer.
actually.
Okay, I didn't know if he was. I didn't know if that's what he was playing. But yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch is also.
It's tough to buy. He's playing a veteran who lost somebody dear to him in that, who in trying to stick up for the government's case learns a lot.
Yeah.
He learns it comes a long way, much to his detriment. You know, at a time where it was either us or the terrorists. Take your pick.
Yep.
Take your pick, Dixie Chicks. Take your pick, whomever.
Yeah.
If you're not on our side, you are a terrorist. And we still live in that. We live in a much dumber version of that today than we did back then, which makes it almost worse because it's so transparently stupid. But back then it was harsh, man. They said you're not on Team America. I mean, it was a time where that was a big, big deal. And to stand out and speak your mind was a true act of bravery.
Yeah.
It's fun that we get some version of that in this film. It really helps the film because Jodie's lawyer character, she's got her, Shailene Woodley's great in it. She's got her naive young assistant. That's a fun relationship to watch on screen, but it's really Benedict's character who kind of comes around, and it's interesting. It's an impossible thing for a guy in his position to do. He starts out as an up and comer, you know.
Yeah.
You want to get back. I mean, that's basically how they pitch it to him. You want to get back at one of the people who killed your friend. Booyah. What else are you going to say to that?
Right. All right. Well, next up we have more Benedict. We have more Cumberbatch. coming at you here.
He was a busy fellow, wasn't he?
Yep. And this one right here in the trailer, it says,
based on the incredible true story.
It is called The Courier.
The Courier.
Yep. This is Cold War spy Greville Wynn and his Russian source try to put an end to the Cuban Missile Crisis. There you go.
This movie, while it's chucking along, feels like Bridge of Spies a little. So if you like that, maybe it's recommendable. But because it really is this ordinary guy caught up in this sort of Cold War conspiracy, the rough thing about it is this film doesn't turn out good for anybody. They're real lifelong sacrifices made by these attempts. This is a guy who isn't a spy. He's just a businessman. And they use that of him to make a connection with somebody in the Soviet Union who wants to make a connection with us. The whole aim of the thing is to avoid nuclear war.
Right.
But the risk involved in that, even though the risk involved in that is huge when you consider what the consequences are for getting busted or being on the wrong side of the wall at any given time. And the film explores that to a great degree and the cost of that. And it's Courier was really, really good. Courier also really, really good reviews, really good audience ratings. But of course, it's not a film that's going to come across the faces of every audience member, so it's an elite crew perhaps at this point that is even watching a film like that. But I really, really like The Courier. I like I'm a sucker for anything that takes place in another time period and it explores that. So just take the human story out of it, and you got all these cool cars and cool like suits and dresses, and like just you get to go to the Russian ballet. You get to experience these foreign things and these things out of time that I always think are sort of magical. And then the relationship that develops between these two guys is really, really interesting. And so I dig that. And Benedict's character, his relationship with his family, obviously you're invested in that as well. And it's Angus Wright is one of them. And the other one's the woman, I can't remember her, the American in it.
Rachel Brosnahan.
Yes. Those two characters, basically the super spies, the ones who should know what they're doing, the espionage folks, they're not played in a cliche way either by either of them. It's really, really delightful. It's really fun to see Angus. Angus is he's in everything, but he's blinker, you miss him. He's a guy drinking tea, or he's Lord number 4.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like dude with wig. He's a great actor, and it's great to see him in this. Of course, Rachel, it makes sense. Sorry, I don't watch. I'm outing myself as a non-Marvelous Miss
Maisel
viewer. I'm not. I didn't have. Is that an Amazon show? Right? I didn't have Amazon when that started. I intend to watch it. I'm a big fan of the writer and these actors, but and now knowing that Luke Kirby's on that, and he plays Lenny Bruce of all people. That's awesome. I mean, that really is cool. So I'm getting closer. Rachel's great in this. She plays a different kind of person, I like films like this. They're complicated. They emotionally make you confront things that are difficult. I like that. I like getting wrapped up in a story like that.
Sure.
So much better by comparison to the similar like Eddie Izzard film and some of the other films on this list. This one really does. Again, it really feels authentic. It feels like you paid the price for the noble actions of these people right along with them, and that's pretty neat.
All right. Well, next up, we're going to go back into the world of World War II. And this one is Guy Pearce in The Last Vermeer.
Read the synopsis for The Last Vermeer so we can get the names out there.
Yep. So we have, let's see, it's an artist is suspected of selling a valuable painting to the Nazis, but there's more to the story than meets the eye. Guy Pearce.
Guy Pearce plays a kind of failed artist, art critic, member of high society. it's Holland, right, where this film takes place.
Yep.
And Holland, I've said it before, and I've read reviews that it really frustrate me. Holland during World War II, you know, was we've romanticized the sort of French resistance to this degree that, at least on film, you know, you can't go back on. Holland was such a compromised place. Mm-hmm. And what they were able to do to combat the Germans was nothing. They didn't put up anything resembling a fight when they showed up, and they weren't really capable of fighting back. And of course, Germans getting assigned to Holland, getting assigned to Rotterdam or wherever, was a great gig, because it was a lot like Germany, and the Dutch people were pretty much non-resistant, you know. And the people who took a stand against Nazism in Holland during World War II were a special breed of people who were really just compromised morally in the types of acts and the types of things that they had to do. Mm-hmm. And several of them, including this guy, the Guy Pearce plays, were punished or attacked after the fact, because the ambiguity of being part of any sort of resistance in Holland, it wasn't clear what you were. If everyone saw you dating Nazis, they didn't know that you were also stealing information. Likewise, if you were a Nazi in Holland, you were probably a more mild one. You weren't dragging people out into the street and gunning them down in the square. So actual relationships between the occupying army and the people there over those years developed and just made everything complicated and ridiculous. Yeah. I love war stories that take place in Holland. This is one of the better ones I've ever seen. This is ostensibly long after the war is, or not long after, but immediately after the war is over. And it's this trial of this artist who has some rather amazing claims about what he did and what he's done. That's being tried as a collaborator and is going to be executed if he's found guilty of one. And it's really about the character played by Claes Bang, the Dutch actor. It's his lawyer or his advocates, who's basically a Nazi hunter who sort of helps this guy or takes his case, if you will. And it's great. It's a great courtroom drama, right? You love a good courtroom drama.
Oh,
with all kinds of crazy.
Everyone should.
It's got a great, from now on, you tell me everything scene. Which, sorry, every courtroom drama, don't use that exact line, please. They don't. But they all seem to have that, like that moment where the shoe drops and everyone's like in stunned silence, and the true believer character suddenly is like, you're an asshole and deserve to die, and everything is sort of full. This film has a great moment like that. And Guy Pearce as this flamboyant high society, it's a delight. I mean, it's a disguise and it's a little silly. You see Guy Pearce there, but those types of performances at their best, you just get. It's so exciting. And Claes Bang's been in a bunch of great movies recently, and he'll continue to be in great movies because he's a very, very complicated, really great, like old school Richard Burton kind of performer who doesn't do a whole lot and yet conveys a great deal of emotional complexity. And so I'm a big fan of his. Right. So I loved Last Vermeer. And again, another movie which it's not going to be on everybody's to see list, but is really well reviewed and very impressive thing. The art in it.
Yep. And also important to note,
based on the incredible true story.
Yep. So, very cool. All right. Finally, in our War Politics, Cold or Otherwise category, we have America's sweetheart, Tom Hanks, getting together with America's action downer guy, Paul Greengrass.
Shaky cam man.
Yeah, shaky cam man. With News of the World.
Yeah, Paul Greengrass wanted to make a super downbeat Western. And I've said this before on the show, and it's very, very true. And this movie is very, very much this dream realized finally for Tom. Tom Hanks, for a decade, wanted to bring the film The Postmen to the big screen. Obviously, that was ultimately directed and starred in by Kevin Costner to much, much critical dismissiveness and audience anger and resentment.
Yeah.
But that film is ostensibly a fable about this guy who finds himself in this weird situation, and it's the fable aspects of it that are exciting. It's written by David Brin, who's one of the best writers of hard science fiction ever. So the book is good, The Postman, but something happened when Costner got a hold of it, where something happened to it. I don't even think it's a bad movie, but something of what it is lost in it, and so you're forced to try and take it all as an actual thing, and it's hard to do that. It's just too silly of an idea ultimately. The Newsman's about this guy after the American Civil War has ended, and he goes from town to town, and his whole thing is he reads the news.
Yeah.
And these weird illiterate people come in, or people who don't buy newspapers, or people who, because they're in a mining outpost, are completely out of touch.
Yeah, they don't get the news there for whatever reason.
Right. So he basically reads through the news, but what his real gimmick is picking out the weirdest stories and telling them in this wonderful sort of audience interactive way. So he gets through the headlines so that everyone's up to date on what's going on in the world. But he always picks out this, woman killed her husband for whatever reasons thing. And he always finds this human interest, hard copy, like current affair type Americana story to share with these people. And it's fun. It's a really fun role for him, watching him read this thing.
Sure.
But he gets through misadventures or bad luck, whatever you want to say. He gets hooked up with or interconnected with, I won't explain how, that's part of the joy of watching it, this young, raised by Indians little girl. This is a story that's old as the Western itself, really. The little white girl who needs to be rescued but has completely gone native, or the little big man. It's that idea.
Yeah.
And of course she doesn't know anything other than she's completely gone native, and he's trying to get her through the world and get her to her people. They know where her relatives are through some convoluted means I can't even remember. But he basically takes on the job of getting her from one place to the other. And along the way doing his work. And he attracts some unsavory folks, and he gets some help from some kind people. And it's really just a road movie between these two.
Sure.
Him and this little girl. And it's in an old school Western way. It's a very convoluted relationship. And I think if people had a big criticism of it, I think it was that, because it couldn't have been the look of the thing. And it can't be really the performances, because they're top notch. It was nominated. It was almost in our Oscar category, or it's an honor to be nominated category. So it was nominated for cinematography and maybe only cinematography. But that alone, to some of us, that's a big category where we may not see all the best adapted screenplay films. We're damn well going to see all the best cinematography films, and I'm one of those people. Cinematography in this stunning, and there is no shaky cam action sequences. It just isn't any of that. There's none of the Bourne sequel or Green Zone, or just name all the Paul Greengrass movies that you want. United 93, is that the number? That one stuck with me. Boy, that movie's amazing. Anyway, it's not like that. It's just it's an old-fashioned Western idea shot and made in an old-fashioned Western way. And it's beautiful, and as a Western, it's got some complicated stuff in it. The relationship between these two, while a Hollywood cliche, goes in sort of different places than you would think. And I really was taken with it. But it's a downbeat, ugly, muddy, dirty, very poor post-war America that we're experiencing. And I liked it for that. I liked it for that reason. I enjoyed that movie quite a bit. If Tom Hanks wasn't enough to get you there, then you probably are avoiding it for the right reasons. But I I dug it. There was much more right than wrong with News of the World.
Sure. I hesitate to mention this as a capper to this, but we haven't brought him up the whole show, and but Gordon didn't like this film.
Oh, he didn't.
No.
What did he say?
He said it doesn't the subject heading doesn't resonate with me. Story's good, however, it doesn't resonate with me as their lives are so far from mine. Okay, Gordon.
That's fair. Their
All right.
lives are so far from ours. Of course, that's what draws me to the movie.
Yep.
So maybe me and Gordon aren't the same that way.
There
it would
we go.
explain why Gordon reviews so many conventional mystery thrillers and stuff, because those people, typically their lives are ostensibly like ours, and it's the situation that they're drawn into. You know, this guy, his whole take on life is completely different. The little girl raised by Native Americans, I mean, they come across different Native American characters throughout the film, part of which is a detriment to this mission, and part of which really, really helps the mission. So it's just this mixed bag that's really, really fun. She's great in it. She's really great. What's the little girl in News of the World? Yeah.
The kid, I just was looking at it, Helena Zengel. She's
going
German.
Places, kid.
Yeah, she's German, and she never knew, she didn't know who Tom Hanks was.
You can tell she's not impressed with him at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's part of why it works, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, the kid is not impressed with the character, nor is the actor starstruck by this guy at all. And that's fun. Hanks gets it, you know, because he gets everything. So
yep.
I don't know. I don't think we can breach another category. So this.
No. I think I was just going to tease. I was going to tease what we have coming up, because we still have some really great. You know, have we talked about musicals yet? No, we have not. So we have a whole category of musicals. There's something, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but there have been a few like comic book movies out lately. We're going to talk about those too. We have
not all of them, but not all of them,
but a bunch of them. We have, we have some sci-fi, some big time sci-fi, and some little time sci-fi. And we have some crime dramas and crime thrillers. We have a bunch of really fun movies to talk about still. So I hope that you will continue to hang out with us as we go through 2021 here. And because we're going to come across some sneaky films that you might be looking for something to watch on a Saturday night while you're at home.
I can just tell you, if something like Last Vermeer, if that idea sounds cool to you, then you will like it. It is good. It's everything it's cracked up to be. And if you really like the idea of something else, and I was a little more hesitant about it, then give it a chance. It really is. You like the premise of the thing? Does it fulfill its promise? That's how we're trying to review these. Yeah. This had a lot of my own biased favorites in it. Although a couple of these I didn't like. Zola, Zola's incredible. People should see that if they're interested in that. There's certainly no other. Well, there are other movies like it, but there's no other movie that I'm aware of that as accomplished as that one that is based on a series of
Twitter threads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there isn't. I mean, that's a movie for our times.
Yeah.
So, I gave it a try. I don't feel like it was a waste of my hour and 49 minutes. I didn't like it, but that doesn't mean it was bad. So,
right.
We try and read between the lines as we keep going. And guys, let us know if you're watching any of these and if you're digging them or if you don't share our opinion or stuff, and we'll get your opinion on the show. And if we've left something out, maybe it's coming up, but maybe it isn't. Mm-hmm. Throw it out there. We'd love to hear from you.
And of course you can reach out to us on the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan Facebook page, Movie Show with Joel and Ryan on YouTube. If you were watching this, like and subscribe. And of course, if you are listening to us and you haven't for some reason subscribed or given us a rating, whether it be on Apple Podcasts or we got some of the other platforms, iHeartRadio or Pandora. Please go ahead. Please feel free. You know what? We're going to say you should go ahead and give us a good rating. I think that
we're not removing ourselves from Spotify, not because we don't stand in solidarity with Neil Young and Joni Mitchell and all those super old people, but rather because we're not sure how to do that since it's all uploaded from a different place and we don't actually do it ourselves. And no one really listens to us.
No one listens to us there anyway.
If it makes you feel better.
If we figure out how to deplatform from Spotify, we probably will.
Yeah.
Whatever. All right. So, and you can, obviously we're on Twitter and Instagram too, at Ask Joel and Ryan. Give us a look there. But yes, and we will be back next week. And we're going to be hitting some sci-fi. We're going to be hitting some crime movies and stuff. And we will have a whole bunch of fun stuff. Until then, thanks everybody.
Hi, you guys.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.